A very good morning to all. My name is Bobby Alex from Sabah Tourism Board, and I'm your MC for this morning's event. We are now broadcasting live from Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, Malaysian, Borneo. Good morning to our moderator and our guest speakers. And I would like to thank all viewers for joining us this morning. Welcome to our online conversation on Sendakande Memorial 2021. Sabah Tourism Board once again pays tribute to the fallen British and Australian prisoners of wars in remembering the Sandakan run-out death marches during World War II through this live engagement session today. This is the second year the event is conducted virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the current restriction to travel. Our guests today are comprised of distinguished speakers, and we are very privileged to have them on board and speak with us today. Stay tuned till the end to meet them later in this program. A note for all viewers, when you type in your comments and questions, please tell us where you are tuning in from, and your liking and sharing this event would mean a lot to us. Thank you. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the moderator for today's program. She is Puan Noreda Osman, the Chief Executive Officer of Sabah Tourism Board, who is herself has been very involved in the organizing of the Sendakande Memorial event for many, many years in the past. And in fact, Puan Noreda was heavily involved and truly hands-on in the very first Sendakande Memorial service way back in the year 2003. Please welcome Puan Noreda Osman.
Good morning and salam Sabah Maju Jaya, and a very warm welcome to all our guest speakers and our esteemed speakers who are here with us this morning. Thank you, Bobby, for that kind introduction. As you all know, for those of you who are just joining us this morning, I believe we have shared the information for everyone to join us, especially for friends all the way in Australia. So as you all know, today we have our online conversation, and our main topic and our only topic is actually the Sendakande Memorial. And for those of you who are not aware, Sendakande Memorial is held every year in Sandakan on the 15th of August. And if it was not for the pandemic, this is the 19th year we would have organized the Sendakande Memorial. So it's been a long time, since 2003. And like what Bobby said, I personally have been involved in the event when it was muted and suggested in year 2003. When we started working with the Sandakan Municipal Council in order for us to commemorate as well as remember those fallen soldiers during World War II. So for this morning, we're very privileged to have with us a few key distinguished speakers, those who have just joined us. First of all, we have His Excellency, the British High Commissioner. Good morning, sir. Mr. Charles Hay, who have kindly spared his Sunday morning with us. He is based in Kuala Lumpur. His Excellency has been in Malaysia since 2018. Am I right? Yeah. And prior to that, he was based in South Korea. His Excellency, as the British High Commissioner to Malaysia, was actually succeeded to Miss Vicky Treadle, who was here in Malaysia before His Excellency Mr. Charles Hay. And during his time in the British Diplomatic Services, he has been posted to many places: the Czech Republic, Spain, and the UK representation in the EU in Brussels. And His Excellency was also the Director of Consular Services in London, responsible for assisting British nationals and in crisis management worldwide. And he has kindly joined us today, this morning. He has been to Sandakan, I believe, and for a few years, He was with us also during our hybrid event last year. During the beginning of the pandemic, we had His Excellency, the British High Commissioner, and also His Excellency, the Australian High Commissioner, both kindly were present in Sandakan today. And later on, when we shared our experiences during Sendakande Memorial the last many years now, you will know that at this time, the event would have just ended. Normally, the Sendakande Memorial begins at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and it would be about 9 o'clock in Australia, 9 or 10 o'clock, I believe. So it's a good timing for everyone to wake up and join us. So for this morning, we have His Excellency Mr. Charles Hay. We also have Mr. Dr. Ian Hodges, who is the historian at the Department of Veteran Affairs Australia, and we have Dr. Arthur Chung, who has been with us, who joined us at the Sendakande Memorial for many years. He normally hosts, or rather is the MC for the event. But last but not least, we have Ms. Catherine Choi. She's right there. Hi, Catherine. And Catherine, as you all know, especially friends in Australia, you all know her. She's always the key person running around in town, welcoming our dignitaries, welcoming our friends from Australia, and she knows everything from A to Z. So it's a good sharing this morning with Catherine. So without further ado, for us at Sabah Tourism Board, we're very pleased to be online here with you this morning. And as you all know, during this pandemic, it's a different challenge that we are facing today for the past 18 months. However, today, let's divert our attention slightly to what happened many, many years ago, more than 70 years ago. So we'd like to share Sendakande Memorial with all of you today. So first of all, I would like to welcome His Excellency. Your Excellency, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Your Excellency, I would like to begin today with yourself, and we would like to know how significant is the Sendakande Memorial to the British. You have joined us for the past couple of years. I believe you have attended the event twice, if I'm not mistaken, and you yourself have been there and experienced the whole event. Yeah, Your Excellency, please.
Thank you very much, Nareda. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm delighted to be with you, although obviously only in spirit because I'm sitting here in KL. Yes, I've been twice to the Sendakande Memorial. The first year that I was here, it was a regular event. And the second year, as you say, it was a hybrid because of the coronavirus pandemic. And it is, for me, a very, very special event indeed. In the UK, we have every town and village in the UK has a war memorial. These were mainly put up to commemorate people who died during the First World War, and then in subsequent wars, the Second World War and afterwards, more names were added. So people know and remember. But I think what's very special about Sendakande is by being there, you really get a sense of what it was like, at least a little bit, for those poor souls who perished on that dreadful death march. You feel it's an extraordinarily beautiful spot for those online who haven't been there. And in Catherine's backdrop, you can see the memorial, which is set in the middle of jungle in the camp, which was the start point for many who died on that terrible march, on those terrible marches. And you get us, and last year, after the hybrid event, I was fortunate enough to go with Mr. Tam, who's a well-known tour guide and also very much involved in the events. And we walked some of the route that these poor prisoners of war walked back in those terrible days. And it's really, even for us who are, well nourished and with water and food and so on, it was tough. And you can only imagine how tough it must have been for them. So I think Sandakan Memorial Day it also doesn't just commemorate those particular terrible events. In a way, it's a memorial to all of those terrible atrocities that happened in the Far East in those years. And in the British forces, for example, some 300,000 were taken prisoner of war during the course of the Second World War. And 100,000 of those died. So a third died in one terrible place or another in those days. And of course, the toll that leaves in terms of families, lives cut short, it's really very, very hard to comprehend. But standing there in the peace and the beauty of the camp in Sandakan, you start to get a sense of what it was all about, and it's very hard to sort of recreate that otherwise. And I've got with me today the traditional neckwear that I was presented with last year, so I'm going to put it on now as my sort of a little bit of remembrance. I'm also wearing the tie of the regiment of the Gordon Highlanders, a Scottish regiment which I was part of for 5 years, and again, what happened to people in the Gordon Highlanders in a way is a microcosm of what happened to many others. So the entire 2nd Battalion of the Gordon Highlanders, some 600 men, were captured at Singapore, at the Fort of Singapore in 1942. And 32 of them were taken to Borneo to work as forced laborers. And of those 32, only 5 survived the war. And 20 of those 32 have no known grave. And that really brings it home to me, these 42 men from the northeast of Scotland who died terrible deaths far away from their families. And that's what remembering Sandakan Day for me is all about.
Thank you, sir. What would your key message to those who have not been to Sandakan Day Memorial?
So the obvious message is that we must never let this happen again. It's very tempting for us to think about human history as a sort of arc of progress and that we've left all those things behind. I don't think that's true, because we've seen terrible atrocities in different places since then. In fact, we're seeing them still today. And we need to remember what happens if we allow conflict to happen, and the terrible price that is paid by the victims of that conflict. So I would just urge I'm sure that we have watching with us today, perhaps many relatives of people who died on those death marches. They don't need any reminder of this, but other people who are watching, let's all remember what happens when we allow ourselves to get into a situation of conflict.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, likewise, for us Malaysians in Sabah here, not many people knew what was the sacrifices that that our locals faced during those times too. Hence, the Sendakande Memorial, it's a time for us to commemorate, to also appreciate what we have today, Your Excellency. And now I think, thank you, Your Excellency. Please do stay with us. We would also like now, because we have a special message, a recorded message from the Australian High Commissioner to Malaysia, His Excellency Dr. Justin Lee, who couldn't make it with us today. So we would like to play the message from His Excellency.
I'm Justin Lee, Australia's High Commissioner to Malaysia. I'm deeply honoured to make these remarks on the occasion of the 76th Sandakan Day. On this day, we remember the more than 2,400 Australian and British prisoners of war who lost their lives at the Sandakan POW camp and during the death marches to Ranau in 1945. If not for COVID-19, I would be in Sandakan now, alongside veterans' families, Australian visitors, and our dear Malaysian friends from Sandakan and elsewhere in Sabah, at the place that gave witness to one of the greatest tragedies of World War II. Sendakande is etched in the collective memories of our two nations. It bears testimony to the horrors of war. But it's also an occasion to celebrate the close ties between Australia and Malaysia, forged in the ashes of despair. Today we remember the service and sacrifice of the fallen, and also honour those from Sabah who bravely assisted their Australian and British mates in their hour of need. This chapter in our history has laid the foundation for the strong and cooperative partnership that Australia and Malaysia share today, lest we forget.
I'm Group Captain Gretchen Fryer, Australia's Defence Advisor to Malaysia. Attending a Sandakan Day commemoration in Sandakan is an honour and a privilege. In normal times, ADF personnel pay tribute at the site with a catafalque party to guard the memorial, a sign of respect for those who have fallen. We would also lay a wreath in their honour, commemorating all the lives that were lost, Australian, British and Sabahan. The park provides a sombre and honest reminder of the brutality of war and the tragic personal cost. Today, on August the 15th, the day following the Japanese surrender, we remember the individual soldiers who were interned at Sandakan and those who lost their lives on the forced marches to Ranau. We remember also the selflessness of the local people who helped them, some paying for their kindness and bravery with their own lives. We cannot imagine the horror that each suffered, but we honour, we respect, we remember, and we say thank you, lest we forget.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Justin Lee, and the Defence Advisor, Group Captain Gretchen Fryer, with those kind remarks and message for all of us today, lest we forget. I see here on our messages we have many friends all the way from Australia. We have those joining us from Newcastle. We also have, of course, Dr. Ian is in Canberra right now. We also have friends, good friends from Perth. We have Ryan Rowland, who is here this morning with us. Good morning, Ryan, all the way from Perth. Let's see, we have Heath Rogers, also from Sri Kembangan, Selangor. So we also have friends all the way from Kuala Lumpur, from Selangor, from Perak, I believe also. From Shah Alam, we have Philomena Peterson from Shah Alam. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Next, we also have Dr. Ian Hodge today with us, who is a historian from the Department of Veteran Affairs Australia. He's based in Canberra right now. Hello, Dr. Ian. How are you?
Morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning, Dr. Ian, all the way from Canberra.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's I prefer to be in Borneo actually, but here we are in Canberra.
We would have preferred if you were here too, but anyway, we shall keep that date, when we can finally meet you personally in Sandakan.
That would be lovely.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Ian, you hold a postgraduate degrees in Thai language, Asian studies, and Australian history. You also have worked for more than a decade as a historian at the Australian War Memorial, before taking up the role of historian at the Department of Veteran Affairs in 2007. So we feel that you are the best person to tell us more about what happened, be a bit more of the history of what happened then, and perhaps you can share your views on the Sandakan Day Memorial, despite not having attended it yet, but we will get you here.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Ian, please.
Yeah, look, I was asked the same questions. How significant is Sandakan Day Memorial to Australians, in my case, rather than British? And I have to say that, to be honest, I suspect that Sandakan Day Memorial would not be well known to large numbers of Australians, The war was a long time ago. It was in another era, and its deepest impact was felt by the generation of Australians who were alive then. So I think you need to take a longer view to explain Sandakan's past significance and to say why it still matters in Australia. Now, the Japanese took about 20,000 Australians prisoner in the early months of 1942, and most of them were from the 8th Division. And that division had been recruited in each of the Australian states. So people from all over the country had close relatives or friends in Japanese captivity. During the war, very occasionally, some families did receive word from these prisoners, usually very much out of date and very brief. But it's fair to say that for the most part, once the prisoners went into Japanese captivity, they disappeared from view. Some, very few, made it home in 1944. They were rescued at sea after their transport was sunk, but they were very much an exception, and their return did not translate into the public being made aware of what the prisoners were enduring in Japanese captivity. So what this meant was that for 3.5 years, the families and friends of Australians captured by the Japanese lived without knowing anything of the prisoners' fate. So imagine then that on this day in 1945, August 15, the day that Japan announced her surrender, the hope that these families must have felt. And I would remind people that Sandakan had actually been in Australian newspapers in 1945 for many months before the end of the war. Beginning in May that year, Australian troops had landed in 3 places on Borneo, at Balikpapan, Tarakan, and at Brunei Bay. And after these landings, newspapers reported the possibility that the prisoners in North Borneo might be liberated. And there were headlines in papers around Australia, and they read like, "Our POWs may be saved in Borneo." And there were hopeful stories, and one of them in particular told readers that prisoners were being paid for their labor by the Japanese and that they could buy food and cigarettes from local people. One headline said that Australian prisoners of war in Borneo treatment better than usual. That was on the 4th of July, 1945. Then, just after the war ended, the news changed. Now there were stories that no one had any news of Sandakan or the prisoners, and they warned readers of what they called grim revelations to come. About 2 weeks later, the Sydney Morning Herald, a Sydney newspaper, ran an account by one of the 6 survivors of Sandakan, a man called Dick Braithwaite. All around Australia, from then on, papers began telling of hundreds of Australians being lost in the Sandakan area. And so by September, there were no more stories meant to inspire hope. They were now all about the atrocities at Sandakan. So the war ended in hope for many people on the 15th of August, but less than a month later, Australians were learning of the prisoners' fate. By October, the newspapers were carrying memorial notices and obituaries for the dead of Sandakan. And I thought it would be good to read just one of these obituaries, one of these notices out, to give you a sense of what this meant. And you have to remember that this kind of notice was repeated hundreds of times around the country in the second half of 1945. This one is from a newspaper in a country town in the Australian state of Victoria. It's a bit longer than many, but it's certainly far from the only long tribute that was published. And so it reads, "Another local boy falls in Borneo. Private T.H. Eli in death march. Saturday brought the sad tidings to Mrs. Eli of 5 Henning Street, Dandenong, on the death of her son, Private T.H. Eli, probably better known around and in Dandenong as Tommy Wedlock. Private Eli was one of those who fell in the grim death march from Sandakan in Borneo. He died on 13th of March 1945. Only 20, he was a fine lad, and his mother and stepfather were eagerly looking forward to his return with the other prisoners of war. Then came Saturday's telegram, like a bolt from the blue. Tom was the son of Mrs. Eli and the late Mr. James Wedlock, and was educated at the Dandenong East School. He enlisted when only 17, and after 9 months in home defence sailed for Malaya. When Singapore fell, he was captured and for 2 years was listed as missing. Then came the hopeful news that he was a prisoner of war. His mother had 4 letters from him and also heard 1 broadcast. The last of these letters, although it was written 18 months ago, only arrived a fortnight ago. Before enlisting, Tom worked at the Berry Basket Factory in Richmond and was very highly thought of by his employers and fellow employees. He was a great outdoor lad and had many pals to whom news of his death will be a tragic blow. To his family, we extend the deepest sympathy. Imagine that shift then from hope to despair, how terrible it must have been to dream of a homecoming only to learn that it would never be. So the cruelty that the prisoners experienced at Sandakan was, of course, of a particular type, and very different to that experienced by their families when the war ended. But it shows us how the effects of an atrocity like that ripple out, reaching into homes thousands of miles from the scene of suffering. So, to get back to the question of how significant this day is to Australians, as I said, it's not well known. When Australians think of the prisoners who were held by the Japanese during the Second World War, I would say usually most of them think of the Thai-Burma Railway. Not too many Australians know that a similar number of Australians lost their lives at Sandakan. And just as importantly, when the prisoners of the Japanese returned home, they were encouraged not to speak of their ordeal, to put it behind them and to carry on with their lives, something, of course, far more easily said than done. So it took decades for the public to really hear about what they had endured, and the story only really began coming out in the 1980s. And that's why it's important that there are commemorations and events like this one, and that there's a memorial on the side of the camp that people can visit and learn from. There are memorials to Sandakan in Australia too, all over the country, including one at the Australian War Memorial. And the department that I work for, Veterans Affairs, has published a book on Sandakan and tells the story on its website, and all these can be found online. So the terrible ordeal suffered at Sandakan is not well known, but it's not completely forgotten either. I was asked to speak to 3 questions, and the second one was, again, similar, if there's any message to those who have not been to Sandakan Day Memorial before. So in response to that, I would say that any commemorative event, anytime people gather before a monument to the dead or a war memorial, as they do in better times when there's no COVID at Sandakan in other places, it's an opportunity to reflect on a day like this dedicated to a specific commemoration, to reflect on what happened at Sandakan and what that meant for the families around Australia. But it's also a chance, I think, to think more broadly on the cost and the nature of war. At what for Australians is an overseas commemoration, I think it's also important that people who come to Sandakan Day Memorial remember what the war cost the people of this region of North Borneo, and to remember the many instances of kindness and humanity shown to the prisoners by the people of North Borneo, often at the risk of their own lives. And perhaps too, we should think of what the war cost Japan, that we should understand that when countries go to war, people on all sides, people who had little say in the events leading to the fighting, suffer, whichever side they happen to be on. And finally, I was asked if there was any message to the new generation to commemorate the fallen soldiers who we shall never forget. As an historian, I would always say that it's important for every generation to acquaint themselves with history. The Second World War ended more than 75 years ago, far beyond the living memory of most Australians. And as it becomes increasingly remote in time, with fewer and fewer people with experience either of the war or of parents who lived through it, I think it's more important than ever that we remember what happened. The Second World War shaped the second half of the 20th century like no other event. It was the costliest conflict in human history, and its battlefields reached around the globe. Very few places were unaffected, and hundreds of millions of people lost their lives, military personnel and civilians. So for the new generation of Australians, it's important to remember that the war had a significant impact on Australia, and that their countrymen who died at Sandakan came from the same parts of Australia as they do. But many were young, they had their own ambitions, their own place in their families and their communities, and they enlisted to serve in Australia's name, and that almost none lived to see the future that they sacrificed so much for. Ultimately, I'd emphasise the importance of remembering the price that earlier generations had to pay when Australians have been at war, and that in honouring them today, we're carrying on a tradition of commemoration that in Australia goes back more than a century. And so I'd finish by saying that it's striking how remote from Australia Sandakan is, and that this is just one of many places around the world where Australians lost their lives in the Second World War. but there are few places where they died in more terrible circumstances. So I'm not sure that I've entirely answered the questions I was asked, but I hope that I've managed to help explain why Sandakan should and still does matter to Australians.
Thank you, Dr. Ian Hodge. Yes, definitely. As I said early on, this is also a platform, a place, in a time where we are able to appreciate what our forefathers have actually experienced before. And for us, I have seen quite a number of families. In the past many years of holding the Sendakande Memorial, we have had families from Australia and bringing 2 or 3 generations, not just the elderlies, but they have brought even their grandchildren, and to speak during that particular morning. Perhaps later on, Catherine can share with us. She has met all these families. So we've had different generations, and this is the way where we can still appreciate and, like you said, understand what happened before, knowing the significance of what Sandakan is, and also how we can continue to forge that relationship between Sabah with Australia as well as for Britain. I think we are ready for our first our video. Yeah, let's see who were with us. That joined us all the way from Australia on 2 occasions. I believe it was 2010 as well as 2015.
This place at which we gather gives witness to one of the great tragedies of that war, and we are grateful for their service.
That was 2 Governor General that joined us for Sendakande Memorial, both in 2010 as well as 2015. So we were very privileged to welcome them and for honoring, the event on August 15th. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Chung, he's actually with the Forest Research Center, but Dr. Arthur has been quite instrumental in hosting or being the MC for many years for Sendakande Memorial. Hello, Dr. Arthur Chung. He's in Sandakan right now. He has the forest behind him.
Right. Thank you very much, Norida, for the kind introduction. And thank you to Sabah Tourism Board for having me in this event. My involvement in the Sendakande Memorial actually started way back in 2004 when I was approached to be the master of ceremony for the event by the then president of the Sandakan Municipal Council, Dato Adeline Leong, and her deputy, Dato Thomas Lau. Well, initially, this was quite a challenging task because this event is totally different from many other events, and Sandakan Day Memorial is a formal and solemn occasion with the security forces and so on. And I remember I have to get all the names and the salutations correct for all the high-ranking dignitaries. And at the same time, luckily with the help of Catherine Chua, I have to ensure that the sequence or the flow of the event is correct, such as the timing of the national anthem to be played, the timing for the catapult party to march in and dismount. That was the first time I heard about the catapult party. And of course, there are a lot of terms which are not familiar to me, like the reminiscence, the wreath laying, the last post, rouse, and also there are various speeches, yeah, so on and so forth. However, after the first year, I got used to it, and I quite enjoy doing it now. And as a Sandakan night, it is an honor to take up this responsibility because, as pointed out by Puan Norida just now, and also the two speakers earlier on, this event commemorates the sacrifice of the many soldiers and civilians who died in the war. And this event is held at the Sandakan Memorial Park in Taman Rimba, in Sandakan itself, which is the starting point of the infamous death marches, which Mr. Tam Yao Kong is the expert on this. He often brings the dignitaries and tourists to go through this route. And as I mentioned, this annual event is attended by various local and foreign high-ranking dignitaries, including state ministers, high commissioners from Australia, and also the United Kingdom. And even, as you have seen on the video clip just now, the Governor Generals of Australia, Her Excellency Quentin Bryce and His Excellency Sir Peter Cosgrove and Lady Cosgrove attended this auspicious occasion in 2010 and 2015, respectively. As also pointed out by Puan Norida, I have been the MC for many years, actually 13 years. Yeah. In between, my colleague from forestry, Ian Koo, took over for a couple of years, for 4 years. And throughout my service as the Master of Ceremony, I have served under 3 Sandakan Municipal Council presidents, namely Datuk Edmund Leong, Datuk Yeo Boon Hai, Datuk James Wong, Datuk Peter He, and presently Mr. Wong, Wong Putin. And from the Sabah Tourism Board, I was really privileged to have met the late Datuk Irene Charuruks, who has been instrumental in initiating this Sandakan Day Memorial and putting Sandakan in the world map. Yeah, and from Sandakan itself, and of course, I must mention here Puan Norida Osman, who has also been involved in this event from the very beginning. And as the Master of Ceremony, I have been working closely with Catherine Chua of the Sandakan Municipal Council for the past many years. And now I'm working with Irene Joni also from Sandakan Municipal Council. And in fact, it was Catherine Chua who did much of the hard work, and I did the easier part. Hence, to sum up, it is indeed a wonderful experience being the MC for this event. And of course, thank you to Sabah Tourism Board and the Sandakan Municipal Council for this opportunity. And also, I have been asked to share about what are the significant memories or moments during my years of involvement. One of the very important one that I could remember vividly was in 2008. And during this event, the Sandakan and Kuching prisoner of war, the late Robert Gordon Ellis Flint of Australia, read the reminiscence, and he proceeded with singing the song Going Home. I remember when he started singing this song, it drizzled. Not only the singing was touching and emotional, but the sky was crying too. I also saw some of those at the event were wiping the tears as I was just behind Robert Gordon Ellis Flint, behind the rostrum. And interestingly, the drizzle stopped when the singing ended. So it was indeed emotional and touching. And what a way to remember our fallen heroes in the war. Other significant memories are the visit of the Governor Generals of Australia in 2010 and 2015. It was indeed a great honor and privilege for me to coordinate this event with the presence of the guest of honor. It was, to me, it was a chance of a lifetime. I believe that you all know that the rank of the Governor General of Australia is equivalent to the Malaysia Tuan Yang di-Pertuan Agong, or the King. Hence, it is such a memorable and significant moment. And last year we had the hybrid Sendakande Memorial, as also highlighted by Puan Noreda. I was very impressed with the Governor General of Australia, His Excellency David Hurley, who delivered his speech in very fluent Bahasa. So this is another memorable observation from me. So, dear friends, it is important that we continue to honor the fallen heroes and recognize their sacrifice so that the younger generation and the wider community will know and understand the true meaning of the words, lest we forget. Thank you and have a pleasant day. And now I hand over this time back to the moderator, Puan Noreda.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Chung, for your sharing. And yes, definitely in 2008, it was quite a morning we had. Joining us this morning also, we have Alex Kitingan, who's online. He's all the way in Adelaide. We have Mr. David McGuire, all the way from Kona, Hawaii, I believe. And good morning to Miss Jenny Robertson. She's based in Queensland. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Robertson. We have Stella Lagan, whose family were also involved during the World War II. Cecilia Smith, all the way an Australian based in Tokyo. She is a teacher and she also teaches wartime histories. Also joining us, we have, I believe Ms. Lynette Silver is online also joining us. Yeah, I just saw an email from her saying, yes, I'm tuned in. So hi, Lynette. Hope you're keeping well in Australia. We have Henry Elabra listening in from Adelaide. So we have many friends all over Australia tuning in with us this morning. Thank you very much for joining the Sendakande Memorial online conversation today, August the 15th. Once again, thank you, Arthur. And now we have Miss Catherine Choi. I think everyone is very happy to see her online today, especially friends from Australia. She would be the first person that you meet, or even before arriving in Sandakan, you would have already contacted her, and she would be the first person that you meet, and the last person that says goodbye to you in Sandakan. That's how involved and how committed Catherine has always been during Sandakan War Memorial preparation, and she's always prepared even a year in advance. And she has been a great friend to us, and I believe all of you are missing her already, right? So, Catherine, how are you, Catherine?
Hi, Norida. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to
And
see all of you here.
I see the obelisk behind you. She's actually, what's behind her is the Sandakan Memorial Park, and that's exactly where the memorial is held every year. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Norida. Yeah, good morning. I would like to thank Sabah Tourism for giving me this opportunity to speak about my involvement with the Sandakan Day Memorial. I'm involved with the mostly only with the preparation on the before and during the day itself. So I started with the assisting the officer in charge at that time in 2004 when they had the Sendakande Memorial for the first time on August 15. Previously, it was on May 29. In 2004, it was changed to August 15. So when the officer left in 2004, I was asked to take over the organizing the event in 2005 until 2018. So my involvement is mostly with preparing the guest list and getting all the guests of honors and speakers for the event. We started to get the speakers mostly from the families of the prisoners of war from Australia, Britain, and Malaysia. So this was not an easy thing to do at that time, but I was quite lucky in getting a lot of help from not only from Sabah Tourism, from the Office of the War Graves, and also from the tour operators. To get the speakers from Australia and Britain, I would need to get contact other people, in advance to find out who would be coming for the event during that year, and to get them to speak about their family, to reminisce about the lost ones, the prisoners of war, and likewise for the local heroes' family. I would need to get somebody who would know which people, who are the people who were involved. So I was lucky indeed to get people like Philip Myron. He was involved at a young age with the during the war, and also preparing the order of service. I had great help from Sabah Tourism and the Office of the Australian War Graves. Sabah Tourism did all the design for the cover and invitation card, while Office of the Australian War Graves would help me with the layout and also with the editing. They also helped me with the preparation for the prayers, because I was not familiar with all these things, especially during my first time. So I also had to help preparing for the brass band, getting the uniform bodies, and getting all those people involved to come for the rehearsal. And the rehearsal, I was usually assisted by the officers from the Office of the Australian War Graves. So like Norida said, yes, I always did the preparation much earlier. As soon as the event finished in a year, I would start preparing for the next year, because it does take a lot of time to do the preparation. And I'm lucky that I was given this opportunity to handle this event, because it got me to meet a lot of people like the late Datu Irene Charurux. She was sort of a mentor to me. She was very passionate about this event, and I'm very grateful to all the advisors she used to give to me. And also from Lynette Silva, Cathy Upton, Norida herself, Gwenda Zapala, and many others, John Mackinson. And Arthur himself, we had to work together, getting the salutation and the lineup for the day. And also from my fellow workers too. So as for my memorable, what I remember most about this event is meeting the families of the prisoners of war. Like Norida said, there was one occasion when 3 generations came: the grandparents, the parents, and the granddaughter. And I remember the granddaughter spoke about the great-grandfather. And that was a very, very touching moment. And another event was the 2008, when the late Robert Ellis Flynn sang Going Home. There were many tears, like Arthur said. And one of them was Sandra Sally. I think she was from Australia with the television. She was the television newscaster, I think. She was actually crying when she heard Gordon singing the song. The other 2 memorable events was, as Norida and Arthur pointed out, is the visit of the 2 governor generals in 2010 and 2015. 2010 was it was a very busy year for us, preparing for the event, and I also had to assist with the getting all the itineraries for the Governor General, and also the visiting British and Australian High Commissioners who came on that day. But it was indeed very memorable, because on that day, more than 700 people attended the event. I think it was the biggest turnout so far from 2005 to 2018. 2010 turnout was the best and the largest. So when the Governor General came in 2015, another event also happened that day, when Bunny Glover's son brought along the replica of the Melbourne Cup, and it was actually displayed at the park and also at the reception. So it was a very memorable event, because we had never seen the Melbourne Cup, which they used to play for, I think, during the war. That was a memorable event. And I have been privileged indeed to be able to work with all the people that have been together with me in preparing the Sendakande all these years. The people from the Sabah Tourism, from the Office of the War Graves, from the Australian High Commission, the British High Commission, and I'm very happy that this event is still ongoing, though I've retired in 2019. They're still having the event, and it's really a very heart feeling. And I hope that they will continue to hold this event, and more people from Australia and Britain will come and attend the event in years to come. So once again, thank you to Sabah Tourism and for having me here this morning. Thank you, Norida.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. We have a question here. I think I'd just like to Cecilia Smith ask. I believe Cecilia is the one who's an Australian who lives in Tokyo. She asked, how does Malaysian in Sabah remember Sandakan and the war today? You wanna answer that, Catherine?
How do the? Can you repeat the question again, please?
How do Malaysian or people in Sabah remember Sandakan and the war today?
I think they remember Sandakan by coming to visit the memorial, and also there is they talk about it also, like on Facebook. There is a group there, a historical group, and they've been sharing writings about what happened here, what happened in Malaysia during that time. So apart from having the Sandakan Day, I think that is an Anzac Day service.
Oh, yeah, I think
that answers it. Maybe Acha can help.
And also, I think every Sandakan Day memorial service we've had, we have always included the Girl Guides
Yes,
with us, the students and all that. So this is also another way for them to understand the significance of Sandakan Day memorial, especially those who are within the area of Sandakan. Yeah,
Yes.
Arthur, I think if you see, you will see the video later on. You will see how we have the Girl Guides, the Scouts, and all that are involved in Sandakan Day memorial. So we do not just involve the government officers and all that, but we also and the army and the uniform personnel, but we also involve the younger generation during the Sandakan Day memorial. So we hope we've answered Cecilia's question. We also have Edward Solibi. He's born in. He would like to know more about Sandakan Death March. Yeah. We hope one day we can do another session on Sandakan Death March alone. So basically, all these historical aspects that we have here and the relationship between Sabah and Britain as well as Australia, we can share more with our younger generation. That's the whole idea. And for us, the younger generation to actually appreciate what our forefathers went through before. I'd like to invite Mr. Charles Hay, His Excellency. Would you like to share?
Thank you very much, Loretta. I think that's a really important question about the local people remembering the day, and it gives me an opportunity to say something I should have said, others have said, but I want to repeat it, which is the extraordinary things that local people did to help those poor prisoners while they were in the camp and while they were on the march, at considerable risk to themselves, and many paid the price for that, the ultimate price for that. And it was a very moving experience for me meeting some family members at the Sendakande that I attended who had lost, grandparents or great uncles or whatever it might be. And to sort of counter a little bit the sort of slightly gloomy things I said earlier about conflict always being with us, what's also remarkable is how the human spirit can show its best aspects as well in those terrible times.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Dr. Ian, would you like to share something on that?
I would have to agree with what was just said, and perhaps also to remind people that the people of North Borneo, the local people there, were helping the prisoners long before 1945. They helped prisoners who escaped, again, at incredible risk to themselves. And as I think I said when I was speaking before, it says something about the humanity of people and the desire to help those who are suffering in times like that, when the risk of doing so is to one's own life. And yet people were still willing to do this when they saw the state that the prisoners were being reduced to. They were willing to do what they could to help. And Australians should always be grateful for that.
Thank you, Dr. Hodges. Anything from you, Catherine?
I think that's all. I think that's all from me. So I agree with what they said. Yeah.
Okay, Alex Kittingan, who is in Australia, are asking whether we are aware of the book by Dr. Richard Brathwaite, Fighting Monsters. There's also, and that was a book that was launched in 2016. Yes.
Yes. Yes, I have a copy of that book, but I have not finished reading it yet. I haven't started on it actually. It was written by Dick Brathwaite, Fighting Monsters. It's a very thick book. Yes. I believe they sold the book, I think in 2019. Yeah, during the Sendakande, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Dick's wife and daughter came to Sandakan for that.
Yeah, I believe there have been quite a number of publications published after the commemoration, after the 50th year commemoration that was held in 1995. One particular book that I think all of us have must have read and seen or come across is Lynette Silver's book. Yeah. What was that called? The Conspiracy of Silence. And then there were many books that came along. You know, there was Blood Brothers. There's also a book written by the local families. Yeah, the Fang families, I believe. It's called One Family's Unselfish Sacrifice. So it's a very easy book to read. You know, so all these books, there are many publications that our locals as well as our Australian and British friends can actually look up and read and learn more. It's good to read more before they actually come over. Very interesting books. I think for now we have our last video that we would like to, our final video, which is called Down Memory Lane of Sandakan Day Memorial.
Mother's there expecting me, father's waiting too. Lots of folk gathered there, all the friends I knew, all the friends I knew.
very good morning and greetings from Sabah, the land below the wind. Being part of the Sendakande Memorial Service has shown me that this event in our history is not forgotten. Every year, on this very day, families and friends of the fallen soldiers and locals return to Sandakan to pay respect in memory of their heroic deeds. Sabah Tourism Board value this shared memoir and is committed to the upkeep of this service for the future to come, lest we forget.
Greetings and good morning. Sendakande Memorial is a significant event where we pay tribute to the brave liberators who have fallen for defending this nation, both local and those who came to serve. This part of our shared history has fostered a special bond between Sabah and Australia. Let us not forget their courageous act and sacrifices, lest we forget.
With that final video that we have, we thank once again His Excellency Mr. Charles Hay, the British High Commissioner, who have kindly spared his time on a Sunday morning to be with us here, commemorating Sendakande Memorial and remembering all our friends. And I would also like to thank Dr. Ian Hodges from the Department of Veteran Affairs Australia in Canberra, who joined us, who shared with us. Catherine and Dr. Arthur Chung, you both have been a very important part of Sendakande Memorial. With that, we have a lot to share, a lot to talk about. Perhaps we can do another session on Sandakan Death March. I think, as you all have rightly said, we have more friends in Australia and in Sabah who can share more, especially on the Sandakan Death March. So perhaps we can set a date where we can also have people like Lynette Silver, Tam Yau Kong to share about Sandakan Death March, even the Sabah Society, who actually did the trek before it became a tourism product and also a historical trek from Sandakan to Ranau. So perhaps we can, stay tuned with us. And once again, on behalf of Sabah Tourism Board and on behalf of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Environment Sabah, we thank all our speakers today and we thank all of you who have joined us all the way from Australia. Perhaps in the UK, they will be able to view this later on when we can repeat the recording. So thank you, all our friends in Australia, all across Australia, our friends in Sabah here who have joined us online, and even across in Kuala Lumpur. Once again, on Sendakande Memorial, lest we forget.
Puan Noreda Osman. Well, viewers, we have come to the end of our live online conversation on Sendakande Memorial 2021. We would like to give a big thank you to our guest speakers today, who are His Excellency Mr. Charles Hay, the British High Commissioner to Malaysia, Dr. Ian Hodges, the historian from the Department of Veterans Affairs Australia, Dr. Arthur Chung, and Madam Catherine Chua. We highly appreciate your time to speak with us today. And a big thank you too to our moderator, Puan Noreda Osman, the CEO of Sabah Tourism Board, for taking us through our program today. And also to all of you viewers, thank you for liking and sharing this event. and for staying with us till the end of this program. On the last note, we would like to state that we shall continue to work closely with the British and Australian governments in preserving this important history, to keep the heroic deeds of the British and Australian soldiers, as well as the local villagers alive, lest we forget.